Yo, what's up everybody? It's Drewberry, and here we go with the first snap or pass video for 2024. Alright, and we're kicking it off with Skaar. Now I gotta put a little bit of an asterisk on this video. We don't have a lot confirmed yet for the next season. The development team is on holidays, so we haven't been able to extract as much information as we usually do, but we're still gonna go forward because this card is gonna be releasing on Tuesday, and you guys gotta know if this is a snap or a pass. And let me tell you, I think a lot of people are sleeping on Skaar. A 611 costs 2 less for each of your cards that has 10 or more power. Now, admittedly, I slept on him myself. When I first read about this card in the DATAMINE, I was like, yeah, that could be kind of cool. A bit of a win more card, but maybe not all that great. Well, I completely changed my mind. I think this card is cracked. We're going to get into why I think this is such a good card, but really quickly, I want to point your eyes to the cards on the far left there. As you can see, this isn't typical Spotlight Cash. What I normally do, I list them out, the series and whatnot. This is the Season Pass rewards. So should you choose to purchase the Season Pass, you can get these variants, and along with Skaar, he's a Season Pass card. Now, the reason I'm putting that there is because it is my understanding, not yet confirmed, that we're going to have a second card released on the first week of January when Skaar releases. That card, a little bit of a spoiler, is Skaar. I'm going to do a snapper pass video on her later once I get confirmation that she is actually releasing next week. So it's a bit up in the air right now, and I'll maybe go back and change some of the information later if it does change. But for now, we're just going to look at Skaar and analyze his utility, mechanics, counters, and some deck lists. So let's get to it. So with Skaar, one of the first things that I wanted to do was I wanted to look at how many cards are actually going to discount him. Activate his ability so that he costs less, because that's really the ultimate goal when it comes to Skaar. And I came up with this list. Now, the top cards are all the cards that have 10 or more base power. Whether that changes or whatever happens, doesn't matter, they just have 10 or more base power. That is confirmed. Now, the cards on the bottom are just a few I selected as I thought key opportunities. There might be more that can get to 10 power with a little bit of help, a little bit more support, but they all kind of have conditions that need to be met. For instance, Null needs a lot of power destroyed so that he ends up with 10 or more power. Darkhawk needs a certain amount of cards in your opponent's deck. Warpath needs an empty lane to be on the field. Namor needs to be the only card in that lane. So there's a few conditions with those cards, and they're not all that reliable. Like the monster, you actually have to roll Monster Island for him to pop up. Not the best for deck building necessarily, but there's a few key ones that are going to be sick. But there you go. There's actually quite a few cards that are going to allow us to discount Skaar. But probably one of the biggest things that you're going to notice is that they're all expensive, which means it might be a little bit difficult to actually, get them to 2 or maybe even 0. You're going to have to do some energy cheating, a little bit of manipulation, maybe have a nice curve, some good draws. But there you go. I hope this list helps with your theory crafts. But let's get to the mechanics of this card, because there's a few cards in here that I want to kind of dissect a little bit further. So when it comes to mechanics in Skaar, I think it's mostly pretty straightforward, but there's a few key things we have to understand. Like I was saying earlier, I wanted to look at the ongoing cards because there's a bit of confusion right now. Sebastian Shaw had, permanent power in his text. And it was like, well, what is permanent power? Well, in Skaar's case, doesn't really care if that power was permanent, temporary, base power. It don't matter. If that card reads as 10 power on your side of the board, it's going to make Skaar cheaper by 2 energy. So if you've got, I don't know, like Blue Marvel buffing up your board and it brings a 9 power card to 10 power, well, that's going to discount Skaar in your hand. But as you can see here, this is not a permanent discount. Skaar isn't actually changing from a 6-cost card to a 4-cost card. He's temporarily changing so that you can only spend less energy, but when he actually hits the board, he's going to be a 6-cost card. This is actually important nowadays, okay, because of the card I was referencing earlier that I'm going to be talking about a lot, unfortunately, and that is Skaar. She's looking to protect 6-cost cards. We'll get to that in the DATAMINE combo section in a short minute, but it's worth noting that he will be a 611 on the board. And then if we were looking at other shenanigans, you can't discount him further with Zabu because he's not actually a 411. His ability is just bringing him to only costing 4 energy. And then also Jane Foster, she's not going to draw him because his ability won't take place until he's in the hand. So he's actually only going to read as a 6 cost card in your deck, despite having, let's say, 3 10+ power cards on your side of the board. And then you play Jane Foster, you're not going to draw Skaar. Okay, so some of the pros and the cons with Skaar. Now, the pros are just wild when you put it into context. When you put it out in paper like this, it's so good. So a 0-11 or a 2-11 is just insane. The stats there are undeniably incredible. But then you could start to look at some other things like, oh, 4-11. Okay, so 4-11. My first thought was like, we already got so many cards that do that, but really? That's amazing. Okay, 4-10 typically has a downside. Like we're looking at a Tuba, he's going to destroy himself. Typhoid Mary's going to give -1 to your entire side of the board. Or they have some, obscene condition. Like, I don't know, Darkhawk to get to 10 power is going to require a few cards in the opponent's deck. I'm sure there's a bunch of others. Like you can even look at Warpath, right? Warpath was another card. He needs an empty lane. There's just always these little conditions and it makes it difficult to actually get that 10 or 11 power on the board. Well, with Skaar, he becomes a 4-11 for just having 1 10+ power card on your side of the board, which in deck building, theory crafting, that's not too hard to do. And once you get one out there, if the value is there with a 4-11, man, it's so good. It's so good. And if we get any more than that, then it's cash money. We're just laughing. We're probably winning the game. I love it. And in terms of synergies and combos, I think Skaar is an incredible splash card. You can throw it into a lot of decks, so long as those decks have 1 or 2 cards that are kind of the focus, the key focus, and end up with 10 or more power, you're going to be fine. Skaar is a great card. He's going to have a lot of power, a good output, going to be great. Which does bring me to one of the cons. Win more card. I've heard this in all my times of playing card games. There's certain cards that are not necessarily helping your deck, not necessarily helping you win the game. They're just adding more to your win, adding more power, or whatever it may be. But the more I thought about this, the more I think that does not apply to Marvel Snap. The win more term is just not really a thing when there's wagers in Marvel Snap. Because we're wagering our rank cubes, right? 8+ cubes or whatever, 4 cubes. It doesn't really matter. You're wagering that. You gotta win more. You gotta make sure that you lock it in. There's no question that you're gonna lose. So I don't think win more really applies. So I don't see that necessarily as a con. Now, of course, the reason I'm saying it's win more is because we're already putting up 10+ power cards on the board. And usually that equates to a winning state, a winning board state. There's some counters that we got to watch out for. And maybe it's not enough power because your opponent's doing some crazy thing. But usually if you're already got numerous 10+ power cards, you probably don't need Skaar. But you might. Or you might feel a lot better if you do have Skaar and you got the confidence of a 0-11 dropping on that final turn. So yeah, anyways, I just thought that was an interesting little thing with Marvel Snap comparing, being different from other card games. And then another thing is 6-11. So what happens if you don't have a 10+ power card on the board? What happens if your opponent played Mobius M. Mobius? And this goes back to being a 6 cost. Not that great. Not very exciting to play a 11 power card with no ability on the final turn. Now, it's not the worst. We've actually seen this with like America Chavez. She did other work and other helping things, but sometimes on that final turn, you're like, oh, well, I have nothing else to do. I'm going to play that 9 power card. Skaar's 11 power. Not the worst play, not the best play. I'll go into more detail on this next point, but certain counters are really going to hurt Skaar. So I think while he has a lot of potential, a lot of good synergies, he does have some vicious counters that you got to be aware of and play accordingly. So anyways, those are some of the mechanics. Again, if I missed anything, let me know in the comments below. I will do my best to try and help out with any answers that I may have. But let's check out some DATAMINE combos. All right, so this is pretty much the one I wanted to talk about because, again, like I don't have the information. I don't quite know if there's going to be a new release schedule, if both these cards are going to be released at the same time. It's a bit up in the air. I wish I knew, and I wish I could tell you guys, but I just don't at this moment in time. So, Kyera. She's projected to either come out the same week as Skaar or the week following. And she looks really good. She looks like she can be a great card. She's going to help out Skaar a ton because she doesn't care where she's played. Armor. Okay, let's compare to armor real quick, right? Ongoing, your 1 in 6 cost cards can't be destroyed. Your side only, not reciprocal like armor, and board wide. So it doesn't matter where you play Kyra, she can protect your 6 cost from a mile away. But what she's not doing compared to armor is if you were to play Kyra at a location or you wanted to play certain cards, let's say it's Death's Domain. You can use armor at Death's Domain and the thing doesn't get destroyed. You can use Skaar at Death's Domain now with Kyra on the board and he won't get destroyed. So there's just a few differences here and there. She's also not going to, you know, be a tech card against your opponent because if they're playing a destroy list, she's not going to help. She's only affecting your side of the board. But ultimately, this seems like a very strong card. And Skaar and Kyra are like a match made in heaven. I think there's even lore for it. I don't know it all that well. But then you take the two and you're going to see in my deck list later that it's kind of hard to separate them. They just pair very well. And then the other card is in February, we're going to have Cull Obsidian, who's currently projected as a DATAMINE as a 4/10. You can only play this at a location with an Infinity Stone. Ongoing can't be destroyed. So not only can he not be destroyed, which is just fantastic, but he has that 10 power, which meets the condition for Skaar to get discounted. So that's a lot of power. You play that in a Thanos list. I like that a lot. Should be fun. Anyways, those are the DATAMINEs, subject to change. Time will tell. Let's get to some counters if you don't want to pick up the season pass in January. Okay, so when I was thinking of the counters, I thought there's actually some pretty creative applications, and there's a lot of cards that kind of affect this guy. So of course, the first one being Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi, not only because he'll destroy Skaar, but he'd also destroy other 10 power cards that you have on the board, which could ruin your chances of actually getting to play a discounted Skaar. So that's a bit tricky. Again, Kyra comes in to help. Armor is a very helpful card to avoid this counter. But another one is Mobius. Probably being slept on, man. This guy, there's so much energy cheat and discounts out there, and Mobius is still shutting it down. And he used to be a 2/3, now he's a 3/3. Yeah, I know he's nerfed, but man, he's going to help out with Skaar because Skaar will go straight back up to 6. Let's get your own Mobius out there and they cancel each other out. But regardless, yeah, Skaar, not going to want to see Mobius, and he's definitely not going to want to see Leech, because if you're waiting till the final turn, which I think a lot of decks might want to do that with your Skaar, to play is 0 or 2/11, which is amazing. Leech is going to make it so that his ability is ruined and he goes back to 6. That's not so fun. So you don't want to see Leech, you don't want to see Mobius, you don't want to get destroyed by Shang-Chi, but you also don't want to see Sandman, right? Because you're probably looking to play multiple cards on that final turn. You discounted this card so that you could play him alongside other cards. If you can only play one per turn, who cares if he's discounted? Right? It doesn't really matter unless you can play them on 5 and then something else on 6. But I would wager for the most part, you want to play multiple cards. Hazmat, anything that's going to make it so that we have less power on our cards so that they don't exceed that 10 plus threshold, is going to make it a lot harder to discount Skaar. So I could see this as being a sneaky little counter. I doubt Junker or anything like that is really going to hard counter Skaar decks, but it's something that could happen. And then you got Goose. So you would think Goose would be a good pair, because you can discount Skaar to 2 or 0 and then play him at the Goose location. And maybe you're right. But I wager that because so many cards that have 10 plus power are 4 or more energy, if there's Goose on the board, it's really going to limit where you can play. And ultimately, Skaar is going to have a hard time as well. So whether you want to say that one's a synergy or a counter, it's up to you. But there you go. Those are some of the counters that I see for Skaar. Now, let's get to some deck lists. All right, so some of the key synergies that I haven't already discussed is stuff like Lockjaw, actually. So Lockjaw, right? You throw in, I don't know, Wasp, and it comes out, and it's an Infinite. That's great. You got 20 power, but you also discounted your Skaar. So now he's only a 4/11, and you keep doing that, and boom. Very quickly, your Skaar could be 0. A nice way to get a lot of 10 plus power cards out without actually having to pay the full price. And that's why I got Jane Jaw in the middle there. So essentially, Jane Jaw has been a deck that's been around for quite a long time. Kind of got exceeded by like Thanos, Lockjaw style decks, but I still think it's really fun, really good deck. So you basically are just looking to draw Lockjaw so that you can put in the Wasp, Nightcrawler, Jeff, whatever, and then it spits out a really high power card so that on that final turn, we'll be able to play Skaar for really cheap and maybe even Jubilee or maybe even who knows what else. Another thing at the Lockjaw location, you just end up with a lot of power spread out through a few locations. Then there's also She-Hulk, and I wanted to do something with all of the Hulks because I thought it'd be fun. And you know what? I think it's actually pretty legit. So She-Not is a very popular deck that's popping off where you use High Evo and you use Infinite She-Hulk, and you just get the evolved Hulk, a lot of power, and you skip turns, blah, blah, blah. It's very good. Well, I kind of switched it up a little bit. I took out Infinite, which is kind of funny, right? The She-Not deck is like a part of the name is Infinite. I took that guy out for Skaar. I think maybe it might work even better, and I put in Moon Girl because I want to duplicate the She-Hulks so that if I pass on turn 6, so that if I play Moon Girl on 4, pass on 5, play 2 She-Hulks on 6, and then on turn 7, I could play Skaar, and then maybe if I like got that Chakra discount or something like that, I can play Hulk and 2 Skaars, or just play 2 Skaars plus, I don't know, Kyera to deny a Shang-Chi play or something like that. I don't know. It could be wild. It could be a lot of fun. Or maybe even just pass with your Sunspot out there and he soaks up all that energy and you play 2 Skaars. Something like that. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Even if you just get 1 out at a time, I think it'd be really good. I have Kyera there because I think she's nice to protect these 6 costs, and we have a lot of 1 cost Sunspot Nebula that would be nice to protect. But let's say she's not coming out. I think you could easily replace that with Wave to maybe get one of these cards out sooner, ensure some of those discounts. And then the last deck that I have here is the Skaar Lock deck. So I kind of went back and forth on how I wanted to build this, but I'm pretty happy with it. So I used to play a control list that had Orca and Destroyer and Professor X and Armor and a Tuma. And the key idea here was if I could play a Tuma either into the armor location or solo and then play Professor X, which is not a play a lot of people see coming, and they can't really stop that amount of power, even with the Professor X nerf, then you lock in that lane, and then on the final turn you play Orca or Destroyer. But now we have Blob. And I was thinking Blob's going to soak up all this power as an alternative if we don't draw Destroyer or Orca, or we can wave out into one of those cards earlier, and by the end of it, we'll probably have at least 2, I would say, 10 plus power cards, making our Skaar only cost a 2/11, and then you can play it alongside anything else here. A few of the 4 drops possibly. I was thinking maybe you could take out Namor and put in Shang-Chi as a tech option. Wasn't too sure. I just wanted to make sure that there was enough options that had 10 plus power. So there you go. Those are my decks. Just a couple quick ideas. Again, I don't have all the information just yet on when things are being released. We're working on limited info, but we still know that this card at least is, yeah, hopefully it's a 6/11 by the time this is actually officially announced, and has the same ability. I'm pretty sure it's going to. We'll find out. But is this card a snap or a pass? Yes, sir. Skaar is a snap. Yeah, pretty easy snap in my eyes. Like, even if he doesn't end up being the highest win rate card, he's going to find homes. He's going to find homes in some meta decks, I'm sure of it. There's no way a card with the potential to go to a 2/11, even a 0/11, with not the craziest condition in the world could be bad. It just seems like a very good card to me. It's also the season pass, and the season pass holds the best value that you can spend your money on in Marvel Snap. Now, I understand a lot of people want to be free to play, and that's totally fair to you. I do think Skaar will be replaceable in a lot of decks with other cards. For instance, She-Hulk, as a quick example. But I do think he's going to be really fun. Now, we don't have the Spotlight Cash info. This card isn't going to cost tokens right away. He will cost 6,000 tokens when he is dropped to Series 5 at the end of the month, when he's removed from the Season Pass. So that's something to keep in mind, that if you do pass on the Season Pass, he's going to cost quite a bit moving forward. And with series drops kind of being here and there, you don't know when he's actually going to get cheaper. So anyways, let me know what you think about Skaar in the comments below. If you're excited about this card, any crazy combos that I might have missed, I'd love to hear it. I'm hyped for this season. I'm hyped for 2024. Let's go. New year for Marvel Snap. It's going to be really exciting. Big things coming. All right. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you guys next time.